Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Pod.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network for the final time in 2020. It was a year that started with the Glasgow Film Festival, excitement for a new James Bond movie, the opportunity of a new David Lowery A24 film for us to get excited about, and HBO Max was just going to be a place where you could watch Game of Thrones and debate whether you really actually needed it. And now we've ended the year in a way I don't think anyone could have predicted at the start of the year. But we're not going to be deterred. We're going to put a nice little bow on 2020 and sort of highlight some of the best films, our favourite experiences of 2020 with film, and maybe shine a light on some films that you might not have had a chance to see, and if you're stuck in tier 4 like us for a month, films that you might find desperately to fill the time. But due to a glitch, both me and Dallas have recorded both introductions for this episode, so Dallas, take away your introduction.
Merry Christmas everyone, and welcome to the final filibuster of the year. Well, we made it the end of 2020, and it's been quite the year, hasn't it? It seems like a lifetime ago that Parasite became the first foreign language film to win the Best Picture at the Oscars, and it was pretty much downhill from there. The one constant throughout it all, however, has been this podcast. Despite going into our first lockdown on the 23rd of March and worrying that the last films we were going to see at the cinema were The Hunt or Sonic the Hedgehog, we have actually managed to put out a new episode every single week this year, and I, for one, am thankful for the slice of normality that has been Filibuster and being able to chat about films for about 30-40 minutes a week. I'm your co-host, Dallas King, and of course, as you've already heard, with me as always, socially distanced of course, is Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It was very difficult this year because, like, you know, I've reaped what I've sown.
It's come back to bite you finally.
Yeah, it's one of those things like I have always gone with sort of the approach of like film festival movies, you know, films if I got to see in America, that all counts. So like I had an amazing list for 2019. I had things like The Lighthouse, Uncut Gems, Top of the Pile,
Parasite, Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Yeah. I had the best top 5 in the world. And then like 2020 was like, well, the joy is we both usually submit a top 10 to Hey You Guys, and it's always done on the UK level as well. So I'll be able to sort of regurgitate my sort of 2019 list into a really stonking top 10 for 2020. But for this year, it's going to be, you know, a little bit of a slightly different top films or experiences, and probably some that maybe will again break the rules. So these will be films that will be in a lot of people's 2021 list, but I've actually made it into my 2020 list.
Yeah, no, I thought I would take pity on you, knowing that you were probably slightly barren on the 2020 releases. So we decided that the main categories were going to be, you know, just films which we saw in the cinema this year, and then films that we also saw at home this year. So, you know, I thought I'd throw you a bone and give you a bit of leeway. Otherwise, it could have been a very short podcast.
Yeah, I could have cheated as well. I could have gone, well, I did see Uncut Gems, Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Yeah, that's why I thought, you know, if you saw it this year, then it would count. You know, it's hopefully a unique one-off year. So yeah, our top moments is going to be similarly unique. I think hopefully next year will be, well, who knows what next year's going to be like.
Yeah. I may not have had a vaccine yet, but I'm taking my medicine, and I have any film that I put on my best of 2019 list will not be making an appearance here. So I'm gonna bring variety and accept my medicine for this one. So Dallas, the first of our list is going to be top 5 films that we saw in a cinema this year. So you were lucky enough to go to a couple of film festivals. I was to Glasgow, London Film Festival, sort of did a bit of an appearance at some kind of cinemas around the UK, and we've had some limited windows at sort of the start of the year and then the summer, and then for both, oddly enough, 2 days in Aberdeen as well over sort of the Christmas period. So what were the top 5 films that you picked that you saw in the cinema this year?
Well, you know, I technically could have had zero films because somebody tweeted, there were no Marvel movies released this year, and therefore, there was a cinematic, pop culture void that was impossible to fill. So, what did anyone actually watch? I was actually thinking about it just before this podcast, and no one was really making a big deal about the fact that the 4 superhero movies we're going to see this year were going to be Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 1984, Black Widow, and Eternals, which were all directed by women. I mean, technically, it's still true that all the superhero films this year were directed by women, just from the DC side. But yeah, I thought that was an amazing fact that, no one was really picking up on. But I guess, they were distracted by the fact that everything got cancelled. But my top 5, starting at 5, was The Empire Strikes Back, which, 40 years old. And I was lucky enough to see, I found out that this was screening at The View about an hour before. I think we were actually recording a podcast, and I think we were talking about films which were getting released, and I was just checking the view times and found out it was on in an hour. So we were able to finish up, and I ran down and got to see it on the big screen. Unfortunately, it was the special edition, but still, it was just really nice to see a decent Star Wars film back on the big screen again. So that was number 5. That was the only sort of real re-release I got to see in the cinemas, because Scotland opened up about a month after all the English cinemas did, and they had like everything. They had like Batmans. I think actually no, you were lucky enough in Edinburgh to get like the likes of Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, but Aberdeen was too late to get any of that. So Empire Strikes Back was my one chance to see a classic on the big screen. Number 4 is a film called Mila, or Apples, which was a 5-star film, which I happened to see at the Venice Film Festival, and that made the list purely to drop in the fact that I was actually able to get to the Venice Film Festival, because I have to keep reminding myself, because it just doesn't seem real that it actually happened. Especially given the downward turn that has happened towards the end of the year, it just seems like a miracle that I was able to go. And I did not get COVID, and I did not bring it back. There were 0 cases linked to the Venice Film Festival. I'm just putting it out there before anyone says, you shouldn't have gone across. It's like, it was all very well safely handled. And yes, to be able to see a film in a big screen wearing a mask in Venice was something which I appreciate and I don't take for granted. So that's why that one made the list. Number 3, The Invisible Man by Leigh Whannell. All the way back at the end of February. It was just one of the best horror films, and a really interesting new take on an established horror movie story. Number 2, again, this is where slight controversy, but I did rewatch it in the cinema this year. Number 2 is Safdie Brothers' Uncut Gems. Just as good second time round, and I know we made a big deal about my reaction at the London Film Festival screening, but the second viewing at the Belmont was able to do, I was able to enjoy other people's reactions to those big moments towards the end of the film, and yes, still just as nerve-shreddingly tense second time round, and yes, it inspired me to make a board game of it, which I have played a couple of times, and I'm tweaking it, and yeah, I think it actually does work. So yeah, and number 1. The only film which I saw more than once at the cinema, it's probably a cliche choice, but I really enjoyed it, and it's Tenet by Christopher Nolan. I enjoyed it more second time around because I got a better handle on the story and stuff like that, but I still think for sheer big screen spectacle, that last sort of half-hour long sequence where the inverted time battle and stuff like that is just... It's a film which was made to be seen on the big screen. It's best enjoyed on the big screen. Of course, if you're watching it on the small screen now on Blu-ray, you can put the subtitles on and just understand exactly what people are saying. But for me, yeah, best film I saw within the cinema experience. So yeah, what about yourself?
So I have gone with, I think, a decent mix here. I'm going to call it a slightly eclectic, but yeah. So at 5, I've gone with On the Rocks. As I mentioned on sort of our other podcast, the A24 Project, I really enjoyed it. It wasn't Sofia Coppola's best film. It was a little bit too slight, But God almighty, watching it made me desperate to go back to New York, to be able to be in the company of family, friends, to travel, to enjoy a nice meal or a drink outside. You know, it was a film that just made me think about what life might be like again in the near future. And it was nice to watch a film like that in the cinema, and great on Apple TV and Netflix as well for supporting cinemas as well. The Invisible Man, what a throwback that was. Probably the busiest screening I went to sort of all year. Never anticipated it would be the last in February. A film that I went in with zero expectations but was absolutely blown away by. Les Miserables, a film about sort of French policing. Really tense and uncomfortable film. It was a really interesting piece of sort of counter-programming when Tenet came out. You know, it wasn't just sort of some of the big films that were coming out. Well, the only big film, but there was films like this as well, and I thought it got a really good audience that might not have ever kind of got in sort of a more crowded cinema landscape. At 2, I've gone with Unhinged. It's definitely, must be admitted, yeah, not the best choice of any film this year to watch. But I'll tell you what, I had such a good time watching this. Like, I saw it a few days after Tenet. I was on the other side. I haven't rewatched Tenet yet. I'm curious to rewatch it. I was kind of disappointed with Tenet, but when I went in to watch Unhinged, I just had a smile on my face underneath my mask the whole time. It was just wild, over the top. Russell Crowe just chewing the scenery. It made me really happy, and I thought, what a picture to be like the Al Pacino meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And at number 1, a film that has stuck with me for the whole year now. Caught it at the Glasgow Film Festival. A brilliant 77 minutes. It's Deerskin. So it's about a man's obsession with a designer deerskin jacket, which causes him to blow his life savings and turn to a killing spree. The less you know about this film, the better. I actually believe it's on HBO Max. So it's directed by Quentin Dupleix, and it's also got Adele Hanel from Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So if you do see one film of hers this year, see Portrait of a Lady on Fire. But if you have to watch a film about someone going on a killing spree over deer skin clothing, then that is the film to watch. Unforgettable, amazing, made me smile, made me laugh, and it was great to watch with an audience and going as absolutely blind as possible.
This is a film which I'm still yet to see, but I've been meaning to see it ever since, I think it was it London Film Festival it premiered at last year, and I've just been really meaning to see it. I actually saw his new film Mandibles, about 2 men who find a giant fly in the boot of a car and decide to train it so they could become rich and famous off it. And yes, it is as bonkers as it sounds. He also did Rubber about 10 years ago, a film about a killer tire, and he did the Flat Eric music videos. So he's a very eccentric French filmmaker. But yeah, no, that film sounds right up my street, and I really do need to see it, to the point where I am actually basically going on Apple TV to find out how I can rent it so I can watch it this year. I do need to get that, squeeze that in before the end of the year. But Unhinged as well, yeah, no, it was... I do love a film where a former Oscar winner basically commits to such a crazy sort of B-movie performance, and yeah, it's not the best film in the world by any imagination, but I think it was almost like it's the film you need right now. And it's just, you know, it just helps you take your mind off everything, and you just enjoy a good schlocky action movie and stuff like that. So yeah, an excellent list.
For anyone listening at home, Deerskin is $5 to rent from iTunes, and yeah, it's one of those ones, like it's guaranteed to end up on the top of most people's list. And one thing I want to give a big shout out to for Unhinged was it had the best marketing campaign. Like, I would give that 5 stars on Letterboxd alone. So yeah, yeah, it was definitely the film that we sort of needed at that piece of time. Like, it's just, it goes everywhere you expect it to go to an extent, but like the journey to get there is so wild and mad. It's so good. It makes me so glad that I don't have to worry about a morning commute for another good few months.
Yep, the 19th highest grossing film in the UK last year. So yeah.
There we go. Congratulations to Unhinged and its marketing campaign. So obviously watching films in the cinema isn't, you know, that usually dominates our year in terms of how we watch films, and most of the time at home it's all about the rewatches. But this year, most have had to make do with watching some amazing films for the first time at home. So, Dallas, what were the 5 best films that you watched at home this year? Because I can imagine this was a harder list, perhaps, to compile than sort of what you saw in the cinema.
Yeah, no, I am not one for normally renting movies and stuff at home. I am normally see it on the big screen, and my home watches are reserved for sort of Netflix originals or sort of rewatches of movies which I really like, which I like so much that I will commit to buying physical media. So yeah, it was a very odd year. I did have to amend my viewing habits. I never went as far as going PVOD, but I did rent a few films. I have to say most of them were probably actually A24 films for the A24 project, but I was still able to get a few good films at home. And yeah, my list is number 5, a film which I know certain people are not a fan of, but I think was one of those films which hits just the right sort of time and place, and it is Host, a horror film directed by Rob Savage and sort of written by himself, Jed Shepard and John Huxley, and it is basically a horror film set on a Zoom call, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with Zoom. Never heard of it before the start of the year, and now it's basically the thing that everyone uses to chat. And it's about a group of friends who decide to host a séance over Zoom, and of course, as with any horror film, things do not go well. Carnage ensues, people die, and for making a film during lockdown, using lockdown as a premise, and the way they managed to put it together, I think it was just a really interesting, well executed. It got a good, you had jump scares in it, you had pretty decent performances, you had some great effects, and that you sort of still trying to figure out how did they manage to do that, without actually being there and stuff like that. And yeah, the filmmakers have already been signed up, I think, by Sam Raimi's production company to make some more horror films, and I think they've actually already managed to film something else during lockdown, so well done them. I'm really excited to see what happens to them in the future. Number 4 was Makeup by Claire Oakley. We were both huge fans of this. So it came out from Curzon earlier this year, which features a young girl go to a sort of caravan park at the end of the sort of summer season to live with a boyfriend who's working there, and she starts to suspect that he's been having an affair with someone in the park, and in her attempts to find out what's going on, she sort of tumbles down a very weird rabbit hole of what is actually going on. Is she seeing things? Is there something deeper, sort of more murky and mysterious going on? I think it was a really interesting film in terms of cinematography. It really sort of built up atmosphere and had a fantastic lead performance. The next 2 films are basically films which I'd seen last year at the cinema, but I rewatched them in 2021, and they took on a different sort of life and meaning. Number 3 was The Lodge, a horror film which stars Riley Keough, which it seems in all but name an A24 film, but it's actually a Neon film, and she plays the sort of new girlfriend of a husband who takes his 2 kids out to their lodge for winter, and for some reason he decides he needs to go back to work and leaves them alone, and they get snowed in, and it's basically what happens when they start to believe that there's an evil presence in the house. And yet, if you ask me, the ending is the right ending, and the kids got exactly what they deserved. And number 2 is one of our favourite films from last year and this year. It's The Lighthouse. Basically, exactly what would happen if 2 people were stuck in lockdown together. Fantastic performances from Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, and very meme-worthy at the beginning of the year. And number 1, best film, which I saw at the London Film Festival, because we weren't able to get down there in person this year, so I had to watch it at home. And I was really sort of struggling for a long time with the London Film Festival in just having to review films, watching them on my phone and stuff like that. But it took another round to turn me around on things, and It's a film which, people will say glamorizes drinking, but in the same way, I think that Trainspotting probably glamorizes heroin. In fact, it doesn't. And it features a fantastic central performance from Mads Mikkelsen. I think it will probably potentially win Best Foreign Language Film at the Oscars. And I think you cannot help but get swept away by the final dance number at the end of the film. It's just so unexpected, but it's an absolute joy. And that will be out, I think now, actually, I think they're looking at April next year. It was meant to be out in November. Lockdowns got on the way. So yeah, we're looking at April of next year. So definitely one to look forward to. What about yourself?
So yeah, I've gone for a decent mix. Like the amount of films I've watched at home this year has been a mix of fantastic and a lot of comfort movies. I've probably watched a lot more TV than film, probably for the first time in years. And in terms of even TV, it's mostly just rewatching Star Trek, for example. That's where I feel like I've just kind of just gravitated towards this year. But in terms of the films, it's going to be interesting in a week or two when I have to compile my top 10 for the year, combining all these films that I've watched at home with what's been at the cinemas and festivals, etc. But I think these stand a really strong chance. So at 5, I've gone with The Beastie Boys Story, which is an Apple TV film, and I'm really surprised at how little this has kind of seemed to be appearing in top recommendations and such like for the year. I think it's definitely one of the best streaming films. I like the Beastie Boys, but by the end of this film, I absolutely loved the Beastie Boys. I thought it was a really interesting way to sort of do a biography, really, of the Beastie Boys and delivering it in sort of a presentation. So that was from Spike Jonze. So there's something about the Spikes this year doing sort of music documentary and films. So that was excellent. Number 4, Sound of Metal. Riz Ahmed is a drummer that is going through a crisis when he starts to lose his hearing, and he has to battle whether he's going to learn sort of sign language, sort of what kind of joining sort of that disabled community, and does he embrace sort of maybe getting technology to help with his hearing. I'm someone that does quite a bit of work with people that have hearing issues. One of my best friends also has strong hearing issues as well, and it's one of those things, it's always been quite alien to understand what that experience can be like and how lonely it can be for people, and I thought The Sound of Metal really captured that, and probably one of the best films I think I've seen this year in terms of sound design, and there was a lot of great films for that, so I would love to have seen it there. So it's out on Amazon Prime in America already, so I'd recommend that one. At 3, Minari, one of A24's latest films, so it's coming out in February. We've touched on that on our recent episode. So yeah, a film that really caught me by surprise in terms of how quite deep and emotional it got, and I think it's going to have a strong contending showing at the Oscars next year. At 2, First Cow, A24 again. This got a brief release in March before coming out into VOD in the summer. A film that I was so surprised at how emotional I was about 2 guys milking a cow and making cakes, but somehow ended up being the second best film of the year, and my favourite film of the year that I watched at home, and probably my favourite film of the year in general, was Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, about 2 young women that make the journey up north from Philadelphia to New York as they seek an abortion, and the amount of challenges that they have to overcome within sort of the American healthcare system to achieve that. Really insightful with fantastic performances, and I can't wait to see what they do in terms of their next film, in terms of the actors and the writer-director. That was a really special film.
All excellent choices, and yeah, no, that the Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always scene in Never, Rarely, Always, Sometimes is one of the best film scenes of the year. I think it was just, that's what took that film up another level for me, I think.
So throughout the year, well, last year we recommended at the end of every episode a film from a woman that we would kind of recommend people to check out. This also reminds me, I've not checked what everyone's recommendation for last week was. That's going to be a note for later on. But yeah, we always kind of recommended a film directed by a woman at the end of every week, and we've, throughout many of our recommendations of the year, we've done just that. But Dallas, what is your best film directed by a woman this year? It might be something you've already mentioned, or it might be something a little different. What have you gone for?
Well, I've tried to spread the love a bit around with all my answers here and try not to do too many duplicates. So if something's mentioned in one list, I didn't want to do it in another one. So, but the best film directed by a woman that I've watched this year, it's got to be Saint Maud by Rose Glass. Just 5 stars, one of the best sort of psychological thriller elevated horror films. True, initially did watch it last year, but I have rewatched it again this year, so it does count. And I think it's nominated for something like 17 British Independent Film Awards, like a record for them, and it's the start of a very good career for Rose Glass, and a stunning turn from Moffat Clark as well, and probably one of the best jump scares since Sinister's lawn work in 2012. So the best jump scare in 8 years for me. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm similar to you. I'm spreading the love. Saint Maud was ruled out because it was in my best of 2019 list, but I've gone with another horror as well, and one that I thought was a good film, and I've continued to think is an even better film as the days and months kind of go on, and that's She Dies Tomorrow, written and directed by Amy Smites, and it's all about the idea that the thought that you might die tomorrow and mental health challenges. What happens if it was contagious? And I just think that they've executed such an original idea incredibly well. Again, fantastic sound and cinematography on this one. I just thought it's really stuck with me. And again, a film that's hard not to be sort of elevated in terms of by what we're all going through, and it's become something that's just all too relatable. So yeah, definitely one of the highlights of the year from Neon as well.
Yeah, no, that's a film which I know you were obviously a lot more keen on than I was, but I did think it did contain some of the sort of most stunning sort of cinematography, and the film score was fantastic as well. It didn't quite click for me. I think just because I had a different movie in my head, sort of going into what I thought it was, and it didn't sort of match that. But it was still a very impressive debut.
So we're now going into best cinematic moment experience with an audience this year. So it can't be Marvel. It's not going to be the shock when they all come through the portals. It's not going to be Star Wars where someone lights up a lightsaber. It's going to have to be something very, very, probably very niche this year. So what was your best cinematic moment with an audience?
Well, because of Uncut Gems was technically last year, there was only really one moment that was going to make the top of my list, and it has to be the restaurant scene in Invisible Man. It's a sort of shock moment that comes out of nowhere, and similar to the same way in Scream 2 when Randy dies, it sort of comes in the middle of like the day. It's in broad daylight, they're surrounded by people, but he still manages to get killed, and it's just a moment which is like so unexpected. It's like it's almost like you're taking a breather. It's like nothing bad can happen here, and yet something bad still happens. And the reaction from the audience was just insane at the screening which I saw, and it was just that moment has stuck with me throughout the entire year. Nothing has managed to top that. What about yourself?
So I've gone with this is a slight cheat. It didn't make it into my 2019 list, but it would probably edge into my 2020 list. So it's got a fresh start. And this was a film that I got to see at the Glasgow Film Festival after having watched it twice beforehand. For sort of I watched it on sort of VOD from sort of American iTunes, and that was The Death of Dick Long, which was I think one of the big sellers. At Glasgow Film Festival this year. I think they had to add screenings on, which was always amazing to hear. And yeah, we've had the actors on our sort of other podcast, but it's one of those things that you watch a film like that at home and you think, that's good, that moment lands, I really enjoyed that was funny. You go through all those moments, but then when you watch it with an audience, it's little things where it takes things to a different way, and you realize this really plays well with an audience. It's not just me. And one of my kind of favorite moments in the film was at the beginning, as we get to sort of introduced to this sort of small town in the south, was we got to sort of see things like there was a lawnmower on a pole which is just being like put down sort of a grassy slope at someone's house, and it was just so surreal to see moments like that, and everyone in the audience just started laughing at this lawnmower on a pole. You were like, okay, that's interesting. I mean, the film was filled with so many awkward moments, audience reactions of shock, horror, amusement. But it was just little moments that just remind you, like, what can just randomly play all together differently when you're in an audience that aren't suspecting something. And it's moments like that I miss that make me think, oh, I never thought about that as a funny moment. And now whenever I sort of think about Death of Dick Long, I slightly think of that as just one of those great little funny moments.
That was not the moment I thought you were going to pick from The Death of Dick Long, but yeah, no, I do remember that. I mean, I've seen people in Union's Terrace Gardens in Aberdeen, because it's such a sort of steep slope that they will sometimes, yeah, just they've got a wire on it and they basically just sort of lower it down and then sort of pull it back up. But yeah, it is. You do think that if this is such a big deal, that people would have come up with a more elegant solution to the lawn mowing problem that they have. Something for Dragon's Den in the future.
Exactly. So there's a lot of films that we wish we could have seen on the big screen this year. I think we've got probably the biggest list in the world for this one. But what was the one that you wish you could have just seen in a cinema?
Well, I haven't gone with anything which didn't get released, because that's cheating, because hopefully there still will be a chance to see those in the big screen. But there was one which I think you actually already mentioned it, but it's the reason that I wanted to see it in the cinema, and that is The Sound of Metal. The sound design on that film is incredible in sort of trying to put you into the lead character's world of losing your hearing. Sometimes you're on the outside and you can hear the stuff, and then it'll switch perspectives and suddenly it goes very sort of tinny, or even just nothing at all. And I think it was effective. Well, I started watching it on my phone, but then decided to watch it with my headphones on so I could kind of get a better experience. But I think hearing that in a sort of Dolby 7.1 Dolby Atmos sort of surround setting, where it's all encompassing, would really put you in that sort of headspace. And I think that is why it is the film which I wish I could have seen on the big screen. I know there's still a chance to potentially see it in the UK. I know it's been pushed back a bit, so hopefully we'll still be able to get that experience. But if not yet, that's my pick.
So I have gone with a film that we've both seen, and as much as I thought it was great to watch sort of at London Film Festival on my laptop, because streaming to the TV, as much as I would like to do that, wasn't sort of the best system in the world there for it. And that was Possessor, the film from the son of Star Trek Discovery star David Cronenberg, Max Cronenberg. So it's all about an agent who works for like this kind of secretive organization, and they use brain implant technology to inhabit other people's bodies and sort of carry out assassinations that way. A really great concept. But what I loved about it was what I wanted to be able to experience it in the cinema, where the violence, he takes after his dad. The violence, the imagery, the sound is shocking, surprising, and you can feel a bit uncomfortable as you watch it on your couch or in your seat, or whether maybe you're watching in bed. I wish I was in the cinema where it was just like on the biggest speakers. It's sort of the opportunity to just not turn away in a big screen thing like that. It's easy to just pause it potentially for a moment to process, or to look out the window, or just go, wow. But yeah, I would just love to watch that film in a complete bubble with an audience and to see how they would have gasped, shocked, and for me, I think I would have just loved the experience.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably could have been my second choice. I think it's one of those where you could sort of hear almost sort of and feel people recoiling and wincing around you. I think something like that is because I remember which film, the terrible sort of horror film which we all watched as Team Filibuster at the Edinburgh Film Festival. It was like there was a really slow sort of pushing as a woman got her head cut in half, and everyone was sort of like going oh and stuff like that. So yeah, that kind of like horror movies are always sort of great films to experience with an audience with that sort of like repulsion and recoil. So yes, another excellent choice.
So what would you say the best new film / filmmaker you discovered during lockdown was, Dallas?
I have got to go with a complete surprise to me, a film which I had not planned on watching. I didn't really know much about, but just sort of fitted in between two at the London Film Festival, and I've gone with Rose, A Love Story by Jennifer Armitage, and it's about a couple who live in a cabin in the woods. Always not a good start for a horror movie, but it's, like I say, it is a love story. It's about a guy doing whatever he can to protect his wife, who has got some sort of mysterious illness. What I loved about it is because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what it was, and therefore it was kept fairly ambiguous as to the true extent of her disease. And he's doing a great job of keeping her safe, but as in sort of true sort of Walking Dead style fashion, as soon as someone else comes along the scene, everything turns horribly wrong. And yeah, I thought it was just really sort of impressive debut in terms of the two central performances, the screenplay, and the direction as well. I thought it was a fantastic debut, and I'm very keen to see what happens with this one. And hopefully, this film will get a proper release at some point next year as well. And I think it got nominated for one of the best sort of debut films at British Independent Film Awards as well. So hopefully, fingers crossed, good films, so good things for this one.
Yeah, so mine is a slight cheat because I was familiar with the artist beforehand, but now it's one of those ones I can't stop listening to his work, and that is David Byrne's American Utopia. So I quite enjoyed the Talking Heads. I was never sort of a big fan of them. It would be like, oh, I love certain tracks that they've done, but I think everyone kind of came together when they watched American Utopia over the weekend at the London Film Festival. Was like, wow, this film is great, and it seems to be popping up on so many best of the year lists. There's been some really good articles all about it.
I was actually surprised.
And I just watched that.
It was not on yours. I thought it was going to be, but I guess you're spreading the love. So.
Yeah, exactly. Spreading the love, and I thought this one deserved that. Like, it's one of those ones. It's gone on to running playlists. It's been one of those ones like going for long walks because that's as exciting as things can get just now. It's like, let's get the American Utopia soundtrack on. So yeah, that's been the real highlight. I was now really appreciating sort of the work of sort of David Byrne, the Talking Heads, and I thought American Utopia was like a big smile on my face.
Yeah, I think if we'd had a category for sort of feel good film of the year, I think this probably would have been both of ours because yeah, it was yeah, like I was like you, I wasn't really too familiar with his music outside of knowing like some like the big tracks, but yeah, this was a real sort of genuine surprise for me, and I was just surprised how much I did enjoy what essentially was just a sort of filmed concert, but yeah, no, it was I think it was like you say, it was like the right film at the right time to sort of cheer everyone up during the fact that we weren't able to be in London for the festival.
So you kind of mentioned as well, cinemas have been showing cinemas did show some classic films over sort of the easing of kind of lockdown. People could watch Lord of the Rings extended cut again for the first time, or they could go watch the Dark Knight trilogy or Nolan films or Jurassic Park, Star Wars. What was the best classic film that you discovered for the first time during lockdown? It might have been at the cinema, or it might have been one that you finally decided to address when you've got all this chance at home.
I have to say, I sort of put this category forward, and then sort of looking through my list, I realised that I didn't actually take advantage of lockdown in going through new films which I had not watched before. I think I was going through like a comfort phase of rewatching like the terrible sort of 80s and 90s action movies that Netflix seemed to have a dirge of going over the summer and stuff like that. But there was one film. It's not a classic, and it's not particularly old. It was actually sort of out, I think it was like last year or the year before, but I'd missed it until now, and I watched it, and I absolutely adored it. Might be a slightly more controversial choice given what's happened in the last couple of weeks, but it was Peanut Butter Falcon, which stars Dakota Johnson and Shia LaBeouf, about a boy with Down syndrome who sort of runs away with dreams of becoming a wrestler, and sort of tags along with Shia LaBeouf's character who's sort of on the run for sort of stealing fishing equipment and stuff like that, and it becomes a sort of Huckleberry Finn-esque sort of deep South American adventure. And I was just really, really charmed by this, by the sort of set of performances, the sort of the chemistry between the leads, and it was one of those films that just put a giant smile on my face. And I'd heard a lot of people talking about it and raving about it, and it was just one which I'd never got around to doing it, but it came on Netflix over the summer, and I watched it, and yeah, it charmed the pants off me. What about yourself?
Yeah, I have gone with Psycho. I had the best time with sort of View's October season, where they were putting in like horror films, thrillers. It's as kind of anyone knows, and especially our usual friend on the show, Kim, knows, I've barely seen much in the way of horrors. And Psycho is one, like many other films, I'm like, I want to see it in a cinema one day. I'm not wanting to watch it on the small screen for the first time. And being able to watch Psycho on a big screen, even though I kind of knew where it was going in certain moments, was just amazing. It would be definitely one of the best films of the year I'd seen if it had a 2020 date on it. Yeah, it was fantastic to finally see and hear that score over sort of cinema speakers. Just a great film and amazing performances.
Psycho is one of the two films which I wish I could wipe my memory of and rewatch for the first time, not knowing what was going to happen. Because I think when I first saw it, I kind of also had a similar idea to not know the sort of twists and turns that come along the way would have been to experience that completely blind and cold would be an amazing experience, because it becomes, I mean, I'm excited actually for you to watch it again the second time round, because it becomes a completely different film when you watch it second time round and you know exactly what all the little sort of hints and references to in certain discussions in the parlor and stuff like that. It's just such a cleverly well written movie that the payoff is fantastic, and I'm excited to see what you make of your second viewing as well.
Absolutely. So we're going to end it on guilty pleasure. So what was your guilty pleasure of the year?
I have two. One is a film which I saw at the cinema. No one else really seemed to like it, but I really dug it, and it was Underwater, the last film released in cinemas by 20th Century Fox. Fun fact for you there. It stars Kristen Stewart with a shaved head, essentially in an underwater base which suffers an explosion, and they have to escape. And to escape, they have to basically walk across the bottom of the ocean to get to a rescue device. And it was just the sheer fact that they basically decided to remake Alien, and Aliens 3 in a 90-minute underwater action movie with Kristen Stewart as Ellen Ripley. I mean, it takes some balls to do that, but I mean, I really enjoyed it, and I know not a lot of other people did. And the other one was a film which I should not have enjoyed at all. But again, I think it was during that sort of midpoint of the year where it's like everything's really depressing, but it just put a giant smile on my face, and that was the Eurovision Song Contest movie. Obviously, you know, the geography in that is incredibly suspect as they travel from turn left off the Royal Mile and then down the street towards Edinburgh University, only to have the SSE Hydro in Glasgow at the end of that road. But I mean, it was just like, yeah, the songs were really enjoyable. Rachel McAdams is always a delight and everything. And yeah, it just put a huge smile on my face again. What about yourself?
Yeah, so I've gone with a film which I had a very odd experience with how I watched it, and it's genuinely a terrible film, like really rotten. So I ended up, I think I had a day off or something like that, and I went to go see Saint Maud through in Glasgow. It was going to be like one of these everyman screenings, I think like 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. So I thought, you know what, I'll go through to Glasgow early, get a change of scenery when I could, and I'll go for it. And unfortunately, when I kind of watched the film, when I arrived in Glasgow, it was like, oh my god, it's raining. I can't walk around. Right, I'm going to have some pizza at Pisano, and then I'm going to go just watch any film that's on sort of at Cineworld to kill the time. So I was kind of having a look, and I was like, no, that doesn't work in time-wise. No. And then I was like, after we collided, I'll give it a go. You know, what's the worst that can happen? And the film sort of opens with this sort of like 5-minute sort of like, almost like a previously on. And I was like, well, this is really quite creative. You know, it's almost like the happy ever after, you know, as opposed to sort of the film where they have the cliche of this is what happened before, this is how the rough guy met this girl while trying to get her in this contest that we've all seen before, so cliche. And I watched the film and I thought, God, this is pretty terrible and cheesy. You know, it's all about these two young lovers. One guy's like a badass sort of English guy, and this girl, you know, she's doing really well in her career in journalism, but he's messed up and he's bad, you know, whatever. And I watched the film, and it's a very, very horny film. You know, it wouldn't surprise anyone to notice that the film's underwear was clearly sponsored by Victoria's Secret. And then after the film, I kind of read up on it, and I discovered it was in actual fact a sequel to a film that's on Netflix called After, which is directed by a woman. So if you're looking to do your 52 films, and the film's origin comes from a book that was originally adapted from One Direction fan fiction. So you watch the film and you will see it, and you'll think, oh, that's clearly who's the guy that was in Dunkirk?
Fionn Whitehead.
Whatever it was, guy. No, the guy who was in One Direction.
Oh, Harry Styles.
Harry Styles. It's clearly based on like a cliche stereotype of Harry Styles. It's not as good fan fiction as the one that we saw in Euphoria, but yeah, it is a really weird, bizarre, cheesy, tacky film. I think the female actress in it, I think it's Josephine Langford. She's really good. But God, the film is terrible. But it was something about it where it was like, I can watch this film in the cinema. I can cringe in my seat. I can have a laugh. That's okay. If I watched it at home, I'd be like, I'm going to switch this off now. Yeah, so I would recommend After We Collide. I believe there's another 2 or 3 films coming, so this could be a franchise that ends up being bigger than an Avatar at this rate.
I missed that one at the cinema, sadly to say. I think you're talking about the 14th highest grossing film of the year. It seemed to actually connect quite well. Again, maybe it was just out of sheer lack of other options that people went to see this, but I did enjoy one sort of rom-com sort of romance film that was released in cinemas. I think we both enjoyed Broken Heart Gallery, but yeah, that is something that guilty pleasure, I guess. I'll put it on my, if it turns up on Netflix and whatever, yeah, but I wouldn't be rushing out when the cinemas reopen to catch that one, I don't think.
Yeah, so we usually end every episode. We've recommended so much for the year, but we'll go one step further. Is there a book, a film, a podcast, anything that you'd recommend people to check out as they enter sort of tier 4 and the Christmas period?
Well, there was one series which my wife and I ended up binge watching the other night. It's set at Christmas, so it ticks that box. It's 8 episodes, so it could take a day, it could take a couple of days, so it might give you a bit of time. And this is Dash and Lily on Netflix, and basically I started watching it because it's set in New York, and it made me pine for being back in New York, similar to On the Rocks, and it's about a sort of a young man who sort of finds a journal in the Strand bookstore that has got like a sort of quiz in it, where it's basically trying to find out the secret identity of the woman who left it, and it becomes like this notebook-esque story where they put in notes and then they give it back, and then she has to find it, and then they basically fall in love through writing in this. And of course, true love never runs smoothly, but it was quite a charming sort of. And it's all about Christmas and stuff like that, and sort of being alone at Christmas and wanting to find someone and stuff like that. So it ticked a lot of boxes, and yeah, it just made me want to go back to New York. So yeah, that'll be my recommendation at the moment.
I should also add, After We Collide is currently the 99 cents movie of the week on iTunes USA. So if you've got any credit left over, you've got After on Netflix, After We Collide. Just make sure that you let your wife know that you're watching some sort of weird Harry Styles love fantasy fiction before she walks in some quite intense sex scenes.
Thanks for the tip. Yeah, if I've got money left over from buying deerskin, then I'll chuck that one on as well.
So I'm going to recommend this week. So I've been enjoying the Trek Geeks series, their Skip It or See It, to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Star Trek Voyager. So they've been doing them over the year, and they came to the conclusion with season 7 this week. So I've recently just finished a rewatch of Star Trek Voyager. It's been probably one of my least favourite Star Trek shows, but it's been on in the background throughout the year, and I probably wouldn't have done that if I actually had a life and had work to go to. So yeah, I would recommend the Trek Geeks Skip It or See It podcast. But just want to say thank you to everyone that's tuned in for the year, shared, listened, sent nice comments, got involved. Really appreciate that, and hopefully you and your family and everyone stays safe over the Christmas period, and we will see you for hopefully a really exciting 2021, which I'm going to officially kick off in spring. So hopefully some good films and good things to look forward to then. But we'll be back in the new year, and thanks everyone. Take care.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.